Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott Selections here for Saturday, June 29th. Before we get into the play of the day, we'll quickly recap what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, we ended up picking up a loss with the Arizona Diamondbacks on the money line against San Francisco Giants. Game was very close. Diamondbacks kept stranding runners. Honestly, it just didn't really work out in the end, but we'll look to bounce back today. And unusually, we usually just only cover the MLB card, but I really didn't like anything on the card. So I decided to give out something else, and we are going to be looking at a play of the day in UFC, as there is a fight card that is on ESPN. So you can actually watch it without having to pay for any type of, extra service or anything of those. So with that being said, we're actually going to dive into it. And our play of the day will be on a prelim fight that should be taking place roughly 6:30 Eastern time. And for that, we're going to be looking at Maurice Greene as he takes on Junior Albini. And we like Greene to get the job done here at the money line at roughly minus 107, which is available at Pinnacle. So in terms of that matchup, we like it because of the fact that, first of all, we just think that Greene's in better form. If you look at these two fighters, if you haven't really watched UFC before, there are three main things that I like to follow when it comes to predicting a fight or to handicap a fight. And the first thing that I look at is height. Second thing I look at is reach. And the third thing I look at is jiu-jitsu or just specialty expertise. And with that being said, how's it going, Terry? Thanks for joining us. With that being said, I think that Greene checks all the boxes here. Greene is 6'7", and he is also he has a very impressive 82-inch reach. So he'll definitely be able to control the distance. Meanwhile, Junior Albini is 6'3", and he only has a reach of about 74 inches. So Greene here is 4 inches taller, and he's got a very solid 8-inch reach advantage. And he also has 4 submission victories, and Albini has had 3 submission losses. Albini's not a slouch on the ground by any means, but at the same point, you compound the fact that Greene has won he's won his first 2 fights of the UFC. Albini's lost his last 3 fights of the UFC. There are rumors that Albini will be cut from the UFC roster if he ends up losing, but I don't think that really means anything. If you look at who Albini's fought against recently, Arlovsky's definitely a shell of himself. He lost. Olenek's pretty good, so I'll let that slide. And then he lost to Rosenstruck, who's pretty solid. But at the same point, he's lost his last 3 fights. Greene's been rolling. Greene's a bigger fighter. I think he's just a better overall fighter, and I think Greene should be able to get the job done, as he has won 6 of his last 7 fights. And he's also beaten some decent fighters recently, and I think he will be able to dominate with his reach advantage. I think he'll be able to also dominate on the ground. And for that being said, I lean to Maurice Greene on the money line in the UFC undercard at minus 107 on the money line. How's it going, Mike? Thanks for joining us. With that being said, we're going to dive into the MLB leans for today's card. And we're going to start out with the 4 p.m. games here. First game we're going to talk about is between the Indians and the Orioles with Plesac versus Cashner. I will lean to the Indians here. Orioles embarrassed the Indians yesterday, but Plesac is significantly better than Clevenger. I simply just chalk up to yesterday as Clevenger just not being the same pitcher he once was after rehabbing from that injury that he had. Cashner has been good this season, but I like Plesac. I think he's a very good young pitcher. Lean to the Indians there. Moving on, you have the Royals versus Toronto. I will lean to the over in that one. Toronto's actually scored at least 5 runs in each of their last 6 games. So they've actually been really solid scoring, and I think that Toronto will keep it going in this one. Lean to Toronto at home. Plus, Homer Bailey's been good lately, but at the same point, I just like Toronto's lineup recently, and Gurriel Jr. continues to crush, so I'm going to go with Toronto and the over. Moving on, you have the Phillies versus the Marlins. I lean to the under 8 here. Yamamoto has been fantastic this season. He's 3-0 with less than a 1 ERA. Eflin's been pretty good, did not pitch well against the Mets in his last start. But the Marlins simply aren't a great hitting team, so I will lean to the under in that one. Moving on, you have the Rangers versus the Rays with Sampson versus McKay. McKay being called up for this start, his first start in his career. The Rangers won the game yesterday. I will lean to the over 8.5. Sampson's been okay this season, but I like the Rays at home. And McKay in his first MLB start, I expect him to, I expect him to struggle in his first start trying to adapt to Major League hitting. Yep, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Hopefully we've been able to help you out in some of the leans or just how explaining the thought process of how I look at most of the games on the card. So I'm glad you've been enjoying the content. But moving on, I will lean to the Rangers here actually, and I will lean to the over because I think McKay will struggle in his first start. Moving on, you have Atlanta versus the Mets with Tehran versus Mets. I have to lean to Tehran here and the Braves. I know Tehran struggled against the Mets in his last start, but the Mets bullpen has continued to blow games. In terms of where I'd lean, I'd have to lean to the Braves in the second half. If I could fade the Mets bullpen any way possible, I think you pretty much have to do it based on how they performed this last week or honestly this last month. They've just been terrible. So I'd lean to the Braves on that one. Yep. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments. We definitely look forward to providing you with more content in the future. Moving on, you have the Cubs and the Reds. Ended up predicting that thing right yesterday. The line looked pretty sketchy, and the Reds ended up winning easily. I lean to the Reds again today. I know money's come in on the Cubs, but Castillo's been an NL Cy Young candidate, and Quintana's been a little bit inconsistent. Lean to the Reds there. Moving on, you have the Nationals versus the Tigers. I lean to the Nationals, but a minus 200, not much value. I would lean to the Nationals minus 1.5. Soto was good in his last start at home, but overall, his ERA is still above 10, and Voth was actually pretty good in his first start against the Braves this season, so I will lean to the Nationals minus 1.5. Moving on, you have the Twins versus the White Sox with Pineda versus Nova. I will lean to the over 10 here. Pineda has just been inconsistent this season. Nova's been pretty poor, and both teams have pretty solid lineups. Jimenez continues to hit home runs left and right. He had a home run yesterday, and the Twins lineup is still great. So for me, I'll lean to the over 10. I think that Pineda and Nova will struggle, and I think you should see both teams score at least 5 runs in a relatively high-scoring game. Lean to the over there. Moving on, you have the Astros versus the Mariners. You have to lean to Verlander here, but in terms of the actual value, I don't really see much. Maybe taking the Astros team total in the first 5. I don't really know how to bet this because I think Verlander will easily win, but laying 350 in a baseball game is just not a great way to make profit. So Kikuchi's been inconsistent, but the Astros have not seen him yet. I think Houston will build off the walk-off home run they had yesterday and the come-from-behind win. But overall, Springer's back in the lineup. Altuve's still in the lineup. Bregman's still in the lineup. I think they're going to score more runs. Lean to the Astros team total in this game, and I'll lean over there. Moving on, you have the Brewers versus the Pirates. Brewers blew the lead yesterday, ended up losing. You have Lyles versus Woodruff. I'll actually lean to the Pirates in this game. I know that Woodruff's been great this season, but I really don't like the way the Brewers have played for the last week or so. And the Pirates, I know that they're a little bit inconsistent. They're 22-22 on the road, so they're not awful on the road. I just like the way they've been playing lately. I like Newman. I like Bell. I think they have pretty good pieces in their lineup. And I will lean to the Pirates for pure value on this game because I simply just don't think the Brewers should be a minus 210 favorite here. I think that all the values on the Pirates might plus 190, plus 195. I think if you told me that Woodruff was against Lyles, I think the Brewers should be roughly minus 175. I think minus 210 is way too much. Lean to the Pirates on that one. Quick question for Mike. Do I lean to the Cincinnati over 8.5 against the Cubs? That one's tricky. At first glance, it actually is at 9.5. You said 8.5 there, Mike. It's actually at 9.5. In terms of that game, I would lean to the under just because of the fact that I really like Castillo and I think Quintana's pretty solid. However, if you wanted to get a little bit greedy on the total, I think taking the second half over makes a lot of sense because I really don't like both teams' bullpens. So if you really think there's going to be a decent amount of runs, I really don't think that'll come from the starting pitching. I think most of the runs will come from the bullpens from the 6th inning onward. So if you want to take the over, I'd lean to the second half over. But in terms of this full game, I would lean to the under 9.5, as I think Castillo and Quintana will pitch well. But in terms of this game, I'd lean to the under, but I really don't have a thought on that one. Moving on, you have the Dodgers versus the Rockies with Kershaw versus Gray. Lean to the Dodgers on that one, roughly minus 145, give or take. Rockies finally beat the Dodgers. They were 0-12 in their last 12 games against the Dodgers before finally winning. And they decided to not use Wade Davis as their closer, and Oberg pitched a 1-2-3 ninth. So that was a smart transition by them. We were right about the Dodgers team total over there as they ended up scoring 9 runs. Definitely keep crushing the ball. Gray's been solid lately, but I trust Kershaw here. I think the Dodgers will win. Lean to the Dodgers there. Moving on, you have the Diamondbacks versus the Giants. Giants got the win yesterday, but you have Greinke versus Pomeranz. I will lean to the under 7. I will lean to the no-score first inning as well. Pomeranz has been awful this season, but he has been fantastic at home in his last 3 starts, and Greinke has been amazing as well. So for me, I think that you should see less runs in this game, and I will lean to the under. Another question from Mike: Do I fade the public? Typically, I follow line movement, if that makes sense. So I'm not automatically going to say, well, the public's on this team, so I'm automatically going to bet against this team. The only time I'll fade against the public is when I see, or conceptually, I see that the public will be on one side, but yet the line continues to drop or go in favor of the other team. And for me, that's just a huge red flag. People talk about the sharp money versus the square money. And I think a perfect example is if you see the Cubs yesterday, for example, against the Reds, and you see the Cubs are roughly minus 120, and you see Hamels is going up against Sonny Gray. Conceptually, you know all the money's coming out on the Cubs. So you assume the Cubs are going to open up roughly minus 130, minus 140, and continue to be bet up. However, when you know that all the money's coming in on the Cubs, and yet the line drops in favor of the Reds, or the line stays around the same at roughly minus 120, that's a red flag for me. And that's a sign that I think I should be back in the other team, because you know which team that the public likes. Which teams the public likes to bet on. They like to bet on the Red Sox, they like to bet on the Yankees, they like to bet on the Cubs and the Dodgers, and nothing really changes there. So if you see line movement that goes against them, that tends to always be sharp money, as you will see the public continue to bet the same teams over and over again, regardless of who's pitching or regardless of the matchup. So that is what I look for when it comes to fading the public. Yeah, Mike, hope to bring you a winner in this one. Moving on, you have the A's versus the Angels. I will actually lean to the A's here. I like the way they played yesterday. The Angels ended up getting blown out. Olsen had a couple of home runs. Oakland overall, I thought, played pretty well. And Oakland's been a very streaky team. They win a couple, lose a couple, and I think that they're going to pick it back up here. So Anderson versus Skaggs, both pitchers are decent, but I will lean to the A's as an underdog here. I think there's a lot of value on it. In the last game, you have the Padres versus the Cardinals with Paddock versus Hudson, and I will lean to the Padres in this one. I really like the way the Padres have played over the last week or so, and I definitely like the way they came from behind yesterday against the Cardinals. Paddock struggled lately, but I look for him to get it back on track. Lean to the Padres in that one. But the play of the day, as I said before, is going to actually be on a rare UFC play, as I also follow MMA on my own time, and I could actually make a video on that in the future, previewing fight cards. But the play of the day will be on one of the prelims, and it will be on Maurice Greene beating Junior Albini, and the line we got is at minus 107 at Pinnacle on the money line. So hopefully we'll be able to cash a winner with that one. But before we conclude today's video, quick reminder of our sponsor with PointsBet, online sportsbook in New Jersey. Mike, sorry about that. I know most books have UFC. I don't know if some of them don't let you parlay it, though, so maybe you're on the parlay section. Check the straight bet, see if you have it. If not, maybe it's on a live bet, but apologies, Mike. All I know is that most books tend to have MMA, so I will be looking at that, and I see a lot of value on it. So that's the reason why I'm giving that out as play of the day. But quick reminder of our sponsor, PointsBet, online sportsbook in New Jersey. Great deal for you, up to 2 risk-free bets up to $1,000. So you get 2 free bets for the, so to speak, of up to $1,000, where you can just bet on whatever you want. And if you win, you get the profit. And if you lose, you end up just simply getting your money back. So it's really a win-win. And that's why PointsBet is all over, the Twitter sphere as well as YouTube, as they have a lot of great promotions and a lot of books, as well as a lot of just content creators. Definitely like the direction they're headed, including myself, and I'm definitely happy to have them as a sponsor. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections here for Saturday, June 29th. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.